it, 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 I'm sure, of course, she felt something, but it felt unfair. It felt small, comparatively. If your loved one or your husband has had some very serious issues brought before him. So when she engaged in her normal kind of banter of trying to poke at me and get me to react, I literally just got into bed. I remember the television was on, and I was reading, and I suppose Miss Heard was down in her area taking off her makeup and changing into sleep clothes, whatever, and she entered the bedroom while I was laying on my side of the bed, reading, and she was still rattling off all the wrongs I'd done to her in that particular day, and how unreliable I am, and what a horrible person I was, and I did not engage verbally, nothing. I sat there or laid there, reading my book, and when she didn't get a jump out of me or a jolt out of me, she got out of bed. She walked around the bed. She came to my side, and again, you've got a person who is throwing multiple shots at your face, at your head, at your neck, at anything she could hit. So I got up out of bed, and I grabbed her by the shoulders, and I sat her down on the bed. And I said, I'm leaving. Please don't get off the bed. Please don't follow me. Please don't try and stop me. I'm leaving. And she got up off the bed, and she squared off at me in the doorway of our bedroom. And I said, what do you want to do? Hit me again? Would you like to hit me again? And I said, go ahead, hit me. Bam. And then I just said, is that what you wanted? Would you like another? Bam. There's the second one. And I said, good, now you're done. Grabbed her by the shoulders, walked her to the bed, sat her down, and said, don't follow me. Leave me alone. I'm out. I'm gone. I went, I grabbed a few things, and I got out immediately, and I went to my other house on Sweetser. As Ms. Heard she was leaving the following day for Coachella, which is Coachella is like it's a big event, a concert, many bands, and out in the desert. She and her friends were going to Coachella for the weekend, and that was it. That was it.
Mr. Depp, after April 21st, 2016, when was the next time that you actually saw Ms. Heard in person?
I left Ms. Heard, I left Penthouse 3. I left at 4:30 in the morning. It was actually her birthday. It was about 4:30 in the morning, April 22nd. and that's when I left. And from that moment on, I did not see Ms. Heard until May 21st.
And why was that?
I had received some news that was as absurd and grotesque and cruel. And then I was shown a picture of what the problem was. I had gone to Mr. Bett and said, she's at Coachella. I think it's a good time to go downtown so that I can get some of my things, you know, and get them out of there, especially the things that were precious to me, you know, children things from friends, Brando, Hunter, Thompson, whatever, things that were important to me. And he said, I don't think now's a good time to go. And I thought, it's the perfect time. She's not going to be home for 2 days. And then he showed me a photograph on his telephone of...
Objection, Your Honor. Also, you're saying.
It's a photograph, Your Honor.
As being relayed to him by Mr. Bett.
He says he looked at it on his phone.
I'll overrule the objection as the photograph.
What was the photograph of, Mr. Depp?
It was a photograph of the bed, our bed, and on my side of the bed was human fecal matter. So I understood why it wasn't a good time to go down there. My initial response to that was, I laughed. It was so outside. It was so bizarre and so grotesque that I could only laugh. So I did not go down there that day.
Mr. Depp, how was your mother's health during this time? Not good at all. My mom was in Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and she was on her way out. She was dying. How often were you going to see her during this time?
Excuse me?
How often were you going to see her during this time?
As much as I could under the circumstances. When I did go and get to see my mom, she was pretty much incapable of speech. Her speech had left her. At that time, she seemed to. Her eyes were still open, and she could kind of react with her eyes, but she couldn't speak. And then, not long after that, once her eyes closed, she lay there for the duration of of her life, which ended on the 20th of May, the night before I saw Miss Heard for the last time. Well, essentially.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Depp, but how did your mother's death affect you?
As would anyone, I suppose. There was one thing that I couldn't fathom was, I brought my kids to see Betty Sue in the hospital, and at that time she was not functioning. She was not responsive. She was alive still. She was fighting still inside, but she was lying in the bed, and what, excuse this analogy, but all I could think of was how if she's conscious if she's conscious of everything that's going on around her, but has no ability to speak, has no ability to move. I knew that the one thing, as far as Betty Sue was concerned, the last thing that she would have wanted was to have ended up lying there on a, what it was like, there's my mom lying there on a deli platter, and it was a horrible image. But I brought my kids in to say goodbye, and we all spoke into her ear, and then she passed away later. So it was painful, but there was some side of it too, at least to me, that in a way it was, I was happy for her.
Why was
Because
that?
I can't imagine Betty Sue or my mom, I can't imagine anyone lying there in quite possibly was a kind of a locked-in syndrome. And if she's surrounded by 10 people looking at her lying there on that deli platter, if you will, I was happy for her that she was out of pain, out of frustration, out of... I was happy that she'd moved. Not happy, I was relieved that she was no longer in that situation. Though, when those you love leave, we're the ones stuck with the pain, with the grieving. But I was glad that my kids got to see her and give her her send-off, I suppose. And but it was it opened my eyes quite a lot to a number of things.
And what were some of those things that your mother's death opened your eyes to?
That life is a bird song. That what feels like 100 years is in fact a second, millisecond. Nobody can count those things, so I had made peace with Betty Sue because I understood where she came from, and I understood how difficult her childhood was, and I understood that she had not had the proper training or proper teaching or the proper background to be anything other than what she had been when we were younger. I forgave her for all that, as one would, should. So I was, it opened my eyes to the fact that yes, if you try in relationships, whether friendships, whether courtships, whether marriage, whether this, whether that, try your best, try. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And more importantly, if you're going to get out of it, if you're going to make an end, which I had decided that it was, somebody had to call it, and I decided that I would call Amber and tell her that my mom had died that day. And then I very calmly said, look, I've made a decision, and I think it's the best thing. I'm going to file for divorce, but I'm not going to cite irreconcilable differences. I'm not going to cite any violence. I'm going to state this. We simply, the two of us, we simply don't want to feel as though we have a collar around each other's neck and a leash attached to it, and then this piece of paper that proves that that's true. So what I thought was best was, we want to end this in love and take the idea of ownership of one another out of the picture. And that's how I approached Miss Heard with that. And
So why did you go over to the Penthouses on May 21st, 2016?
Miss Heard had requested that I come over to have a talk, to explain. She wanted to explain things, and so I went there. But I also wanted to gather up some of those things, precious things that you live with. So I went over there to have a discussion, what I thought would be calm understanding. And I figured she understood as well as I did that there was no way back. And I also felt that she would understand that it was the best thing for both of us, and there were no, there should have been nothing to fight over. It was clear. I told her that I would take care of her and all that, and then she was telling me about she brought up the situation of her fecal matter on the bed, and and she tried to blame it on the dogs. But
Why
the
didn't you think it could have been the dogs?
the dogs weigh, they're teacup Yorkies. They weigh about 4 pounds each. The photograph that I saw, I mean, I lived with those dogs for many years, and so did Hilda Vargas. She's a woman who's been with me for 30 plus years, you know, from the very beginning, and she was the one who photographed it. It was clear she knew the dogs as well as I did. And none of that did not come from a dog. That just didn't.
Mr. Depp, could we back up a little bit? Who went over to the penthouses with you on May 21st?
I went to the penthouses with Jerry Judge and Sean Bett, and I had asked them on the just in case, please pay particular attention and stay as close to the door, you know, stay at the door, or if you got a split, come back quick, you know, if they went down to the security shack or whatever it was, don't linger, get back, because if you hear anything, if you hear screaming, you got to get in there. So leave the door unlocked and spring in there if you hear something.
Why did you want them to be able to get into the penthouse quickly if they heard anything?
Just based on my past experiences with Miss Heard, when you say something that she either didn't agree with or swore up and down that it was a complete falsity and there was something wrong with me, I'm crazy, and you know, the escalation. If anything was going to start to escalate, I did not want to be there. So I had them waiting by the door to get in there in case anything went down.
So when you walked into the penthouse, what did you see?
When I first walked into the penthouses, you walk in and then make a left, and then you're in the kitchen area, and then beyond that was the living room. I saw Miss Heard sitting there on the couch, and I went over to talk. I went and sat down on the couch. She was sitting on, the couch was kind of a, you know, a square, or a half square, you know. She was sitting on one side of the couch, I was sitting on the other. That's when she was trying to explain a few things about Coachella, and then the fecal delivery. And saying that it was the dogs, and I could not agree with her. I'd lived with those dogs. I picked up their fun. It was not the dogs. And so what happened was, I said, let's call Kevin Murphy.
Who's Kevin Murphy?
Kevin Murphy had been, he was in Los Angeles. He was the house manager over the places in West Hollywood, and he was also taking care of the penthouses downtown, if any work needed to be done or this or that, and he would schedule the girls who would come in, the ladies like Hilda, to do their work. And he'd had a conversation with Ms. Heard.
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Let's move beyond the
All right, let's move
conversation
on.
that
Certainly.
Kevin Murphy had with Ms. Heard. So after you called Kevin Murphy, what happened?
I asked Kevin if Amber and he had spoken about the incident. He said, yes, they had. Okay. And it appears that Ms. Heard had told...
Hearsay, Your Honor.
I'm not sure.
This is apparently a statement by Ms. Heard.
That he heard from Kevin Murphy. That's what the testimony is.
All right, if you want to reframe that, that's fine.
Okay. After you when did you hang up the phone with Kevin Murphy?
Right about the time that Ms. Heard was screaming obscenities at him and calling him a liar and that he was a scumbag. And I told her, I said, listen, don't speak to this man that way. Do not disrespect this man in that way. And then Kevin Murphy just hung up. And so at that point, she was riled, of course. And I went upstairs to gather belongings. When I came back downstairs, she was on the phone with Io Tillett Wright, and they were making a wonderful point of just how funny it was that I thought that some human being had actually dropped a grumpy, pardon the term, onto the bed, and they were yucking it up. They were laughing about the whole thing, and it was, you know, it was a tough couple of days, and I really didn't feel like I deserved that kind of treatment. And I went over and I said, let me talk to her. I grabbed the phone and I said to Io, you can have her now. She's yours. She's all yours. Right? And then I took the phone and I just bang like that onto that side of the couch was 8 feet long. The other side of the couch is about 6 feet long. I flopped it onto the couch, and I was walking towards the kitchen to exit, and then suddenly Rocky Pennington ran in to the penthouse and started, you know, leave her alone, Johnny, leave her alone. And I was by the refrigerator at this point. I was 20 feet away.
Where was Ms. Heard at that time?
She was still sitting on the couch. And that's when the screaming, you know, the screaming started with, like, again, I'm 20 feet away. She's still got Io on the phone. She's got Rocky there. Stop hitting me, Johnny, she's screaming in her best freaked out, upset voice, high-pitched. Stop hitting me, stop hitting me. Jerry Judge and Sean Bett entered the room. And as they entered the room, and she was quite surprised to see them, she said, that's the last time you'll ever hit me. That's the last time you'll ever do that to me. And again, I'm a good 20 feet away by the fridge. And then Jerry said, "Boss, I think we should just leave." And then we left. That was the last time I saw Miss Heard until she asked me to break the restraining order. Or not break the restraining order, break the restraining order and talk to her in July later.
Mr. Depp, where did you go after you left the Penthouses on May 21st?
I went home.
To which home?
Oh, to Sweetser.
And then where did you go? Where did you go after you went home to Sweetser?
I was due to, I had to go to, I had to catch a flight to New York, where we were doing, this group, the Hollywood Vampires, we were about to set out on a 2 or 3 month tour of Europe, and we were rehearsing in New York, and then we played one show in New York as a warm-up gig, and then we were on the plane, and we started the shows in Europe. And I was on the road from then, which was May, on through July, August or something.
Ms. Myers, is this a good time to take our afternoon break?
I was just going to
Okay,
suggest that. Thank you,
good.
Your
All
Honor.
right, thank you. Let's go ahead and take our afternoon break, ladies and gentlemen. Please do not do any outside research and do not discuss the case. Thank you.